What's up everyone, back for another beer review, and today is day 12 of all Imperial Beer Theme Month here on the channel. The beer I'm reviewing today comes from Brewery Vivant, and they are out of Grand Rapids, Michigan, and this is their Wizard Burial Ground, the 2019 release. So this is a bourbon barrel-aged quadruple ale that comes in at 10% alcohol by volume. No IBUs listed in time of review. This can is approximately 5 years and 1 month old, and I want to give a huge thanks and shout out once again to a very good friend of mine and a longtime viewer of the channel, Jeff, aka NoJinx, for this beer. So huge thanks to him. In the description box, I'll post a link to the beer mail unboxing video I did that contains all the goodies he sent my way, and he actually sent that beer mail about 5 years ago. It was back in January of 2020. We're now in January of 2025. And back in 2019 and 2020, Jeff and I exchanged a lot of beer. And I actually have, in addition to this, another, I'd say about half dozen beers that I never got to. In fact, back in 2020, I had planned on doing a barrel-aged Michigan theme week. Never came to fruition. A lot of those beers still in my cellar, a couple in the fridge. So I thought this year we're going to get to them. And I'm going to start with this one because, full disclosure, I've had this beer before. Not this specific release, but I've had the 2015 and the 2017 releases of this. And it is one of my favorite beers out of Michigan. I gave them both releases, a 4.75 out of 5 on Untapped. However, both of those beers I had were, I'd say, relatively fresh, under a year old, both of them. This one, over 5 years old because, I threw it in the cellar and forgot about it, basically. But I know Jeff never really loved this one. He likes it, but I remember him saying it was a bit too sweet, which was crazy because Jeff used to love sweet beer. Now, not so much, but I remember him just saying, I like it, but I don't love it. Me, I love it, hence why he sent it my way. So they do have a spiel on the side of the can that I hope to remember to read at the end so we can make this like a 25-minute review. But I am super stoked to finally review this one, even though it's an aged can. And if this can doesn't pan out, maybe down the line I'll be able to get a fresh one. I really like Brewery Vivant. Again, they are a great brewery. I've had a handful of stuff from them, but this is my favorite. So we're going to pour it into the Kunin glass because it's a Michigan glass. And here we go. So, the other thing I forgot to mention, I already opened this. The reason I already opened this one, let's make this review as long as possible. When I do start Viewer's Choice Cellar Sunday later this year, I'm going to crack a lot of them open off camera because you never know when you cellar beer and they're real old like this, 5+ years. They could be infected. They could undergo a secondary fermentation, which means the can might gush, it might explode. Same thing with the bottle. So I want to avoid a mess right here in this room. I know it would make for a good entertainment if this just exploded everywhere as I open it, but I have to clean it, you don't. And so I wanted to be safe. When I did crack this one, good carbonation, no gushing, everything seems fine. I did not smell it or anything, so we'll see, but it seems like it held up at least from that standpoint. So we're gonna give it a pour here and see how it goes. So yeah, it's kind of looking like your typical quad. Do something like that. And if that little taste is any indication, this beer has held up fantastic. Holy crap. All right, so yeah, that has a beautiful like burnt orange into like mahogany color. It just has this beautiful like off red, lots of floaties in there. There's tons of sediment. Has just under a finger of a straight up khaki colored head. Looks really smooth, creamy. Looks like it'd probably have a decent head retention, even though it is a 10% beer. But again, this has particles are suspended in animation. You probably won't be able to see. Maybe you'll see the shadow of my hand. You won't be able to make out my hand. But if I hold it up to the light, it has more of like that orange ruby red kind of look to it. But I would say that looks very akin to a lot of quads I've had in my life, albeit maybe a little less dark than a lot of them, but it looks good and it's making my mouth water because of that little sheet I took off of the can. So let's get a nose. Yes. Just so the one thing I remember about this beer specifically is that the barrel dominates. And maybe that's why traditionalists, when it comes to Belgian-style quads, might not like that as much. This has a ton of vanilla, a ton of oak, and a ton of bourbon. It's peppery, spicy caramel. There's vanilla. There's that kind of oak tannin, drying oak tannin kind of scent. Like, yeah, it smells so good. Underneath that, tons of dark fruit. There's, I'd say cherry, fig, plum. There's a nice like white, like a sweet, like kind of confectionery, like white bread thing going on. There's a touch of a like a toffee, a caramel, maybe a touch of butterscotch. Yeah, this is in the nose, and you can't smell sweetness, but perceive sweetness. This smells like it's gonna be very rich, very decadent. This is a sipper of a beer. And again, the couple times I've had this one, I shared the cans and I loved them. I mean, I'm sharing the cans. I absolutely loved them, but I didn't get a chance to drink the entire thing. And I wasn't sitting down in a, for reviewing purposes like I am right now to break it apart, but I just remember loving it. I'm like, that is delicious. I will say, maybe there's a little bit of a slight like infection starting to happen or something very slightly off. It has a touch of oxidation. I'm getting a touch of like a sherry note in this one. So a lot of times with oxidized bigger beers, I get sherry or I'll get like a stale cardboard, like papery thing. This has a little bit of sherry and a touch of a perceived tartness. Very small though, very small. But again, because I said this is the base is like very fruity one, it almost has like a slight tart cherry thing going on. It doesn't smell boozy. It's mellowed out big time from that aspect. Dude, this smells absolutely fantastic. Probably just as good as I remember it with a little bit of that like oxidation / infection, but it's not, I don't think it's infected. I just think maybe that sherry note is making me think it is, but whatever. Let's get into it. Cheers, everybody. Thanks again, Jeff. I do apologize for waiting so long for the 6 or 7 beers that I have, but it is what it is, and we're going to get to them this year. Cheers. Jesus Christ. This beer is fucking phenomenal. It's very sweet though. Not, to me, not cloying, but sweet as in just like, it has a sweet kind of fruity vanilla essence to it. And because there's no adjuncts in here or anything, there's a huge difference to me anyway of a cloying beer. If you get a cloying kind of characteristic in a like beer that has a bunch of adjuncts, like your chocolates and your peanut butters and your maples and, all kinds of sweet stuff. I always find those to be a bit different than if the beer is too sweet, but it's barrel aged or it's just a base beer. It doesn't seem to bother me as much as when it's not adjunct laden. And that's what I'd say here. It's definitely sweet. This is a sticky, sweet, very confectionery-esque beer. But after that first sip, I want to drink more. Like, it's not bothering me. Buying this a little bit thin. Maybe the aging has thinned it out, maybe the barrels, but this is like, I'd say higher side of medium, lower side of full, and it's 10%. I would like to see a firm lower side of full into like a medium full, so it's a bit thin. Shout out to Paul over at Brewed. The mouthfeel, however, this is softer than I remember, even though when I cracked it open, instead I heard the carbonation. You could probably hear it maybe when I was pouring the beer as well. Had good carbonation, but it's a little bit softer than I anticipated based on what I was seeing and hearing. It's like mild to moderately carbonated as opposed to straight on moderately carbonated. So a bit thin, a little softer in the mouthfeel, which is cool though. I think it works in this situation. It's smooth, no real creaminess. So body, touch thin, mouthfeel is nice, but a little bit softer than I thought it was going to be. The taste, front to back, it's like a candied fruit sensation accentuated by the barrel. So forefront, tons of dark fruits, mostly sweet dark cherry. There's some prune, there's some plum, and that transitions into this nice, it almost has a fruitcake kind of vibe at the forefront because it has like sweeter kind of like darker bread notes as well, and it intertwines with that dark fruit, and it's like, oh yeah, it's definitely fruitcake. You could even say it has like a candied, like pineapple, candied apricot, stone fruits. It definitely has fruit cake vibes at the forefront. And then I get a little bit of that confectionery kind of goodness I was talking about. Caramel, toffee, butterscotch is not as big as it was in the nose. Whatever yeast they're using here, it's not really giving me that kind of like ester of like banana or bubblegum or anything. There's nothing going on with that here. Even the spiciness, like the phenolic, like you'd sometimes get a peppery kind of like a black pepper note, or maybe like a coriander or a clove or something like that. Not really getting that either. So I think the Belgian kind of yeast quality is kind of subdued, which would make this stylistically kind of incorrect because there's nothing I would say as far as like a quad goes, there's nothing here that's screaming quad other than maybe that fruitcake vibe. I get fruitcake a lot of times with quads, but I wouldn't necessarily say if I was doing this blind, this is a quad. It's just like a big like English strong ale or American strong ale that's barrel aged. But you know, this is again over 5 years old, so I don't remember fresh exactly how it tastes. I just remember it being really good. But all right, so that's like the first half, 2/3 of the palate. On the finish is where the barrel comes in. And again, it's tons of vanilla and oak. There's a little bit of bourbon. The bourbon was bigger in the nose. I'd say here, it's more of that like vanilla and oak actual barrel as opposed to the spirit. The vanilla is very, very heavy, very dominant. And then the oak is bringing like an oak tannin kind of dryness, like a moderate kind of drying sensation. This finishes semi-dry for sure. No real bitterness. So again, this is a sweeter bourbon barrel aged quad. It definitely is not for everybody. And if you don't have a sweet tooth, then you probably would not really enjoy this one. I've taken, what, 3/4 sips. It's not becoming cloying to me. It's not too rich and decadent. It's not too much confectionery goodness. It's one of those things where it's to each their own. Beer is subjective. You know how many times you hear that on my channel and other people's channels and just in general. It's the truth. And here I would say stay away from a beer like this if you don't like sweet, sticky, barrel-aged quads or barrel-aged like strong ales. But for me, sign me up every single day of the week. The finish is great because I do get a little bit of tartness. So it could be a little bit of that infection. Could be just, again, my mind playing tricks on me. Here's the beauty. There's no sherry note on the palate. There's no kind of stale cardboardy, kind of paper-esque feeling. So I'm not really picking up on any kind of oxidation on the palate outside of maybe that slight tartness on the finish, but it's a very minute tartness. Don't picture like a tart beer, like a Berliner Weiss or like a kettle sour or anything. Not like that. Just a slight. It almost transitions that dark, sweet dark cherry into like a very slight tart cherry on the finish. As far as like the booziness, nah, man, this is wild. There's a very light warming in my chest. I was gonna say none, but that would be a lie. There's a very slight warming in my chest. There is nothing on the palate to indicate that this is a huge 10% beer. From the body being thinner to the lack of a booziness and ethanol kind of quality, this hides the alcohol extremely well. This is just a joy to drink. Is it the most complex beer in the world? No. If I wanted to sum this one up, I'd say, again, fruitcake with the sweet dark cherry being the predominant like fruity note. And then the barrel hits on the back with that vanilla oak quality. Slight tartness on the finish, very slight. This is a 5 out of 5. It is not. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and tell you it is. But I gave it a 4.75 when it was fresh, and I don't think this beer has changed significantly to my palate. This is very akin to what I remember. I remember this beer being a candied quad from the barrel aging, and that's kind of what it still is. It's a candied bourbon barrel aged quad, and it's done extremely well. It's not for everyone. If you like sweet beers, you should seek this one out if you're in Michigan. If you do like quads, strong ales, bourbon barrel aged beers, seek this one out. If you're somebody who the sweetness is a bit too much for you, stay away from this one because it definitely leans sweeter. And I am okay with that. There's a dent all over the can. I remember when he sent it, I think there was already dents because I didn't do them. But, when you send out beer mails, cans can get dented and whatnot. I'm not going to change my rating. Why? Because I don't exactly remember everything about this beer other than 4.75. This isn't a 5 out of 5, but it is in that 4.75 range. So there's no reason for me to change the rating. And I will just leave you with, after 5 years of aging this beer in my cellar, it's still as delicious as I remember it. Maybe a slight difference to when I had it relatively fresh. But man, is this a great beer. So Wizard Barrel Ground, the 2019 release from Brewery Vivant. I am going to give this a 4.75. We'll go on the other side of this because I didn't realize that the dent was there, but 4.75 out of 5. All day long. This is just phenomenal. I love every second of this. I'm going to drink the rest of that, but I'm going to sip on it. And that's another thing. This is scary drinkable. I could pound this one out, but I think the sweetness would maybe, get to me if I just, drank that in like 10, 15 minutes. So I'll be a sipper. But again, it's not cloying to me or anything, so I love it. Price point availability, I have no idea with this one specifically cost, but I looked at their website and they still have the 2024 release on their website, $6.25 a can. Now, this was canned back in December of 2019, so over 5 years ago. I would imagine this was probably $5.50, something like that. It was definitely cheaper, I would assume, back then. If not, $6.25 a can. Yeah, I'd pay that all day. 10% bourbon barrel aged quad in a can, around $6. That's fine with me. So Jeff, if you remember, which you probably won't, but if you do and you watch this, let me know what you paid for it. I don't know if you bought a 4-pack of it. I'd imagine 4-packs in the $20 range, probably something like that. So yeah, that's a great price point. Like if I lived in Michigan and I could get my hands on it and it was that price point, I'd probably buy a 4-pack every year, to be honest with you. And availability, I have no idea with Brewery Vivant other than you can get them at their tap room / brewery. I'm sure they get good distribution throughout Michigan. I have never seen them here in the Buffalo, New York area, so I don't know if they have a beer finder or anything on their website. Also, I did remember to read the side here, so we'll make this a little bit longer. You can shut it off if you want, but see what they say about it. It says, BBA Quad, brewed once a year, this special quadruple is aged in freshly drained bourbon barrels and disappears into the shadows for a full year of cellaring. So they do age it for a year. This year's brew becomes next year's release. The alcohol content of the quad pulls the bourbon, vanilla, and charred oak. No, there's no charred oak. There's oak here. There's no charred oak. Character out of the barrel and melds it all together with the caramel richness already presented. Yeah, caramel, but a lot of fruitiness as well, which again, maybe the aging has really amped up that fruity quality. Maybe the fruity quality is coming from the Belgian yeast. You know, that's probably what is coming, the esters. You know, definitely for sure. So less of that like banana and bubblegum, more of like a fruitiness from the esters and obviously the malt. It says we've been wood aging beers and experimenting with wild fermentation since we opened in 2010. Join us at our annual Wood Aged Beer Festival each autumn to find out more. Suggested pairing. This is interesting. Let's see what they say. This is a beer to be shared. Yeah, I've shared the other two, but not this one. It says, to truly indulge, enjoy with blue cheese stuffed dates wrapped in bacon with a balsamic glaze. Sounds a little bit too fancy for me, but I would totally try to eat those. I wouldn't make them though because I'm lazy. Anyway, great beer. Thanks again to Jeff. I keep on putting it on the side with the dent for whatever reason. So if you've had this beer before, whether it's a prior vintage before this, whether it's a recent vintage, let me know what you thought about this one. Also, I just saw on the corner, it says 1% of sales benefit local charities. That's pretty cool as well. But yeah, if cellaring 50 degrees Fahrenheit or less. So you know what? I cellared this. It's not 50 down here. It's like about 10 to 15 degrees. Like it's like around, say 60 for the most part. And it was cellared for about 5 years. So, you know, I do like that they tell you if you do cellar at what temperature to cellar it at, but I'm telling you, this cellared extremely well, even at the temperature I had it at. And yeah, so anyway, to sum this all up, delicious beer. Huge thanks to Jeff. Again, I have others from him. I have a couple Griffin Claw beers. I have a couple other random, like smaller breweries out of Michigan. I have a couple Founders beers. I haven't been buying Founders beers over the last 2-3 years. So I will review them for sure. But I'm wondering about those two. He sent me the original French Toast Bastard, which I'm sure all of the adjuncts have fallen off. Is probably gross. We'll see. And they sent me the Espresso KBS. I have no idea if the coffee's still going to be there. So we're going to review those before the end of the year for sure. So be on the lookout for those beers. Again, sorry, Jeff. I do apologize, but I don't apologize for this one because this is just as good, if not better, than I remember it. So I'm really happy about it. But again, remembering how much he didn't care for this one because of the sweetness. Again, I think he likes this one. He doesn't love it, but I think the sweetness was a big detractor. Yeah, age Jeff, this ain't you. This is not you whatsoever, but it's definitely me, and I'm gonna go drink the rest of this. So huge thanks to Jeff. Thanks to everybody stopping by for another beer review here in the Beer Patrol. Like I said, 10%, a little warming in my chest, nothing on the palate. This is a scary drinkable beer. One more sip. I just want to enjoy myself before I turn off the camera. Yeah, man, it's so good. It's so good. It's almost like I'm starting to get like a cherry vanilla kind of vibe. The vanilla from the barrel, the cherry probably from the Belgian yeast esters or maybe just the malt, but give me this nice cherry vanilla. And now that tartness I was talking about after a couple sips, it's not really ramping up. It's kind of just staying even keel. It's just a very slight tartness, and it kind of accentuates that cherry note to make it more of like a very slight tart cherry. Man, this is good. Shutting it down. 4.75 out of 5. To the next one. Cheers.